So I thought today's conversation can be as simple and laid back as possible. I am by myself today. We do not have our team members. So I've had a few questions that I needed to answer first. So the question number one was, how was the world like pre deluge era? Deluge means the Great Flood. We technically have enough evidence right now to show the world of academia, serious academia, that there was a form of a cataclysm, a global flood. Although there were plenty of other floods, yes, it might be a controversial take for some, but there were more than a few floods that had happened. The big one, the one we all refer to, is the biblical flood of Noah. Yes, Prophet Noah, peace be upon him. World prior to that flood was completely different. How we can recreate the kind of a scenario, the way the world was, using the current tools that we have these days, but to completely understand, we probably will need a time traveling device in order to go back and have a look at it. How was the world different? That's the question that is bugging the minds of the modern day researcher. And anyone who is curious would love to know exactly how it existed. Think about it in a way. Imagine a hyper advanced civilization. I'm talking about a civilization, I'm not talking about a city. A civilization as huge as the entire planet. We know from the archaeological hypotheses that there was one continent called Pangaea. Now, that was prior to the flood. Maybe it was prior to the dinosaurs. Maybe it was prior to the Book of Enoch when it came down. There was a war that happened after Enoch and before Noah. From the biblical senses, it's associated with Methuselah, which is the great grandson of Enoch, Hanukh, or in the Islamic theology, Idris, Prophet Idris, peace be upon him, and peace be upon all of his family. So the portals, as we know, wormholes, were opened. The entire plane of existence that we call planet Earth was a complete different stage. I'm calling it a stage because something is happening on this plane of existence that consists a constant struggle between the good and the bad, the good and the evil. And the spirit of goodness, or the spirit of submission to one God, always stays in conflict with the spirit of the submission to the satanic forces, or you call it no submission in one monotheistic deity, which all of the traditional and classical religions call one God. Ilahi, Elohim, Yahweh, God, Allah, El Ilah. That's the emblem of monotheism. Now, the portals were open. You might have heard it on plenty of YouTube channels or a lot of TikTokers or Instagram uh, content creators. Now, imagine the plane is a complete different stage. Anything that is terrestrial is known in the Quran as ard, something solid with the physical spatial dimensions. The x-axis, the length, the y-axis, the breadth, and then the z-axis or the z-axis, it's the height, like a cube. For example, my phone in here, you can see it has a physical dimension, and that physical dimension is enough for me to hold it. To hold it, it's not like a line drawn on the paper or a square drawn on the paper. It has thickness, and that thickness allows you to grip, to exist in the planes. Now, if the world exists the way it exists now, and then you are trying to bring the pre-deluge era into perception, into your perspectives, in order to understand how it might have been, then you're going to struggle because think about it. The interdimensional travels were somehow practiced by the humans living at that time. They can literally use sound and energy to create either a bubble around them, like imagine the energy field so the human being is inside, and then I'm going to use this now using sound and the electromagnetic frequencies that create this bubble around, just like a Tesla coil or Faraday's cage. Compress that together, you create this. The human being is in there, and now you are enclosed. Now, this enclosure can then travel into any direction faster than the speed of light. Yes, I said it, faster than the speed of light. Faster than the speed of light, FDL. Theoretically, nowadays, it's not possible. But human thought travels faster than anything in all the cosmos. If a civilization was able to hack into the electromagnetic forces and interdimensional travel, because thoughts travel faster than anything else known to humanity. Combine it together, you can travel through dimensions because thoughts live in another dimension. You cannot use physical rocket fuels, rockets, freightliners to travel into other dimension using the normal physical force. You need something beyond. And the humans living at that time, that era, they managed to do all of that using their mind. So now you are enclosed in the energy cluster, and that energy cluster was able to traverse through space time faster than the speed of light. And hence, if you can travel faster than the speed of light, like the thoughts, you can go into the corners of any unknown galaxy. Like, think about it right now in your brain, you are thinking of the farthest corner of the universe. You can imagine it because we have now mapped it through some of the telescopes that are right now currently peering into the vastness of space. Even using your imagination, you can build galaxies in your head. So you have practically traveled into the far ends of the entire cosmic bubble that we are stuck in. Now, what Islamic and biblical theology teaches us is that there are multiple layers of dimensions. You have one sky, then you have a holding space, then you have the second sky, then you have the holding space, then you have the third sky, and then it's just layers upon layers and upon layers. Each sky is equivalent to a ring sitting in a desert. That's the size, the comparison between the skies given to us by the prophets and by the Islamic prophet Muhammad, peace be upon them all. Now, people are going to say, oh, but you're bringing religion or theology into something scientific. Yes, the only known data on this planet that we have access to is conducted by the help of the theological doctrine, means the religious text. So, humans living prior to the flood, they had access to interdimensional gateways. They used their energy, their brains, their thoughts to create these valuable and extremely powerful devices, and those humans were able to travel beyond the limits that we put ourselves in today, to the vast and the farthest ends of the cosmos, onto different planets, onto different dimensions. I will put the reference on the screen so you'll be able to see that who they are being referred to in the religious texts. Book of Enoch, biggest reference, the Watchers. And we have now found that there are interdimensional beings. Excuse me. The UAP, as declassified by the um, American military organizations. So they've said it that these are some form of creatures, beings living among us. They can travel faster than us. They can disappear faster than our imagination. How and why? Because it's a life form created from a completely different form, or they have access to technology that human beings currently do not have it. But prior to the Great Deluge, humans have had that access. That access, the human, the human ingenuity can be reverse engineered, but you need access to the technology, which will take us back again to the time. Now, the reason I'm spending too much time on explaining this is if you understand the dynamics, the the way the world was, the way the system was, the way the technology was, you are going to be able to understand this better. So that dimension was different. That's why if you find the text referring to the time of Enoch, especially Moses, peace be upon him, yes, you will see that there are multiple things happening at the same time, and it doesn't sit well in one timeline. Why is that? We have to go to chapter number 18 for that. The chapter that is literally, you can translate that into a wormhole, a tunnel, a Fibonacci sequence based spiral, a a doorway, kahf, the cave. And in that interesting chapter, it talks about the travel of Moses and his companion in the seas, excuse me, to go meet an anomaly, Khidr, the green man. And that green man took them to another timeline. So you see, does that make sense now? Is it all getting clear? Imagine so that this planet Earth was filled with different doorways, different dimensions were open, access to different dimensions were open. So much so that a lot of beings from other dimensions were traveling onto this planet to harvest workers, to harvest technology, and also to search for gold. Yes, all seems like a far fetched mythology, but if you connect the dots across all the traditions, all the ancient religions, all the ancient beliefs, including the sunken kingdom of Kumari Kandam, which is a hypothetical continent that got um, submerged underwater. The edges of the continent can be found today in the extreme southern India, all the way to Lemuria, which is Madagascar, and on that side, Australia. It's called Lemuria in English. I will put the name of, I don't remember the name of the guy who called it, but yeah, it's called Lemuria because of the fossils of lemur found in these three edges of the known tectonic plates right now, based on the current geography. Because you have the Indian Ocean, and then on the other side you have the Pacific Ocean, and we know the edges. We know the edges of Australia, India, and Madagascar, which is far end near South Africa. So the myths and the tradition says that the Kumari Kingdom was extremely advanced. They also had a franchise city called Atlantis. Yes, Atlantis was a franchise. Some forms of Atlantis franchise can be found in Mauritania, the Azores, and there's another group of people who think it was Croatia, because in Croatia you can still see the buried Croatia, Serbia. I think it's one of those edges in those southern Eastern European nations where you have the pyramids pretty much found in any hidden areas, and it looks like that the trees were planted on top, either on purpose to hide it, or it was a mixture of both nature and artificial human engineering to protect and preserve the ancient doorways. So these pyramids were used as a vehicle to create those energy bubbles. And once the energy bubble is created, you can travel to other dimensions. The travels are extremely well documented in, for example, the Book of Enoch. I keep on mentioning that. Then you have the Greek mythology, excuse me, the Egyptian mythology, the Nordic mythology, and then you go to the far west where you have the Mayans, the Aztecs. They had access to the stargates. In fact, you can find the stargate in South American regions. They had a king who traveled to the stars. All of that is heavily documented into the hieroglyphs and the pictoglyphs. Then if you come to England, you have Stonehenge. It's pointing towards a specific region in the skies with a great connection to the stars, the stellar gateways. Now, all of that myth or hypotheses or archaeological debates or findings are pointing towards something that planet Earth's dimension was a complete different stage before the flood. That era involved a lot of beings, humanoids. In Islamic theology, they are called jinns. In biblical theology, they are also called jinns, or the evil ones, demons. Then you have another concept of archons. The Gnostics call them archons, the ones who engineered humans. Isn't that telling you something, that the genetic manipulation was taking place at that time to the extreme? Right now we have the IVF clinics. Right now we have the genetic modification clinics everywhere in the world. Sheep Dolly was created through genetic manipulation, isn't it? All of these creatures were created by the human who was interfering with nature.